In the year 2035, technology had advanced to a point where it birthed a new world known as Connect. This digital realm was a mirror of the real world, complete with lifelike AI NPCs, masterful swordsmanship, and spellbinding magic that could only be found within the confines of the game. Over a staggering 100 million people flocked to this captivating world. However, not all was serene. At the entrance gate, a gruesome sight unfolded. A large group of lifeless bodies lay sprawled on the ground, a testament to the brutal conflict that had erupted. Amidst the chaos, a man who went by the in-game name Crash screamed in agony as deadly daggers pierced his body. Onlookers watched in shock as he fell to the ground, his life extinguished. A collective cry rang out, branding Doan a villain and an enemy of the Empire. One voice among the crowd urged the rest to attack the lone warrior. They charged forward, determination etched across their faces. Little did they know that Doan remained remarkably composed, as the system displayed his rank as 13th and his class as psychokinetic. An aggressor took aim, unleashing an arrow and crying for Doan's demise. Yet with a mere raise of his two fingers, Doan deflected the arrow, causing it to decapitate its sender. Panic set in as the leader ordered his knights to unleash a volley of arrows. The projectiles hurtled toward Doan, but he raised his hand once more, halting the arrows mid-flight. The knights gaped in astonishment. In a swift motion, Doan redirected the arrows back at the knights. Chaos ensued as they scrambled to dodge, but not all would escape unscathed. Several were struck before they could evade. With a deft roll of a dagger, Doan closed in on the leader, drawing blood with a swift attack. He then turned his attention to the remaining knights, their curses filled with disbelief at his psychokinetic prowess. One knight, however, gazed skyward and gasped at the sight of suspended weapons. Without warning, Doan manipulated the weapons, aiming them menacingly at the knights. Dread filled their hearts, knowing their fate was sealed. He lowered his hand, unleashing the deadly arsenal upon them. Leaving a trail of lifeless knights behind, Doan moved on. Bloody footprints marked his passage as he entered the castle. Dispatching the guards proved effortless, but as he surveyed the surroundings, he couldn't help but wonder about something amiss. A cough nearby interrupted his thoughts, and there stood the Pope. With a pendant clutched tightly in his hand, the Pope revealed that Doan's quest had reached its conclusion. Doan's eyes fixated on the pendant, realizing it was what he had sought for so long. The Pope spoke of God's foretelling of saviors in this world. Doan reached for the pendant, his grip unyielding, but the Pope questioned him. He asked why there were only fighters, why chaos reigned, why cities burned, innocents perished, and people were enslaved. Doan, without a hint of remorse, snatched the Pope's necklace and nonchalantly blamed the guild that had conspired with the Empire. Footsteps outside disrupted their conversation, and Doan cursed, realizing the guild's latecomers had arrived. Ignoring the Pope's warning about God's intentions, he placed the pendant into a peculiar box with a central hole. As the box accepted the pendant, it revealed a concealed passage below. Descending into the passage, Doan's thoughts were jumbled when he spotted a book and various objects hovering in a purple light. These, he surmised, were the first mythical items within Connect. Memories of 5 years ago flooded back, major guilds colluding with the Empire, leading to the world's destruction. Doan swiftly stashed these precious items into his inventory, aware of the guild's looming fury if they discovered he had obtained them first. As he pondered his next move, his gaze fell upon something intriguing resting on a nearby table, sparking his curiosity. As he examined the peculiar game cartridge in his hand, he couldn't help but wonder why it was there. Suddenly, a powerful surge of energy radiated from it, causing him to wince and clutch his knee in discomfort and confusion. The thought crossed his mind that it might be a connection error, and he pondered its significance. In a moment of panic, he decided to log out immediately. In a blink, he found himself back in his room, jolting upright. His heart raced as he spotted a menacing stab wound near his chest. A voice admonished him to stay still. Frustration bubbled within him. Things were going too smoothly, he thought. The man, accompanied by a group of well-dressed individuals, questioned his restlessness and suggested that he should embrace a peaceful death. Anger welled up inside him, and he spat out insults, branding them as nothing more than worthless scum. Within the group, one man informed their leader about capturing Doan and inquired if they should bring him in alive. The response was chillingly clear. The president only desired Doan's head. The group then took a firmer grip on him, mocking his audacity to believe he could escape unscathed because of his gaming skills. They scorned him, taunting that he was fearless after gaining fame. Desperation coursed through him as he begged for his life. One of the men covered his face with a menacing mask and raised a sharp blade, ready to deliver the fatal blow. Panic seized him, and he thought these men were unhinged for taking lives over a mere game. He wondered if his end was inevitable, like this. Suddenly, a voice repeatedly called him sir, jolting him awake. Panic surged through him as he sat up, bewildered. He examined his hand in confusion and glanced around, trying to grasp what had just happened. He vividly remembered his death from the stabbing. Nearby, someone groaned in pain, and a maid named Anna inquired about his well-being, addressing him as Raul. The name struck him as foreign, and he wondered who Raul was. But his astonishment deepened when he noticed a level status above Anna, indicating she was at level 3. Anna expressed concern about his cold sweat and suggested calling a doctor. He was lost, unable to comprehend the situation, feeling like an unwitting witness to something inexplicable. Then, a notification from the system appeared, informing him that his soul had settled in, activating Connect's closed beta system. He was now equipped with the user interface, and the current user count stood at 1. Panic coursed through him as he questioned whether it was some cruel joke. It dawned on him that he had somehow found himself inside the world of Connect. Stepping onto the room's balcony, he marveled at the sensation of the wind and the surroundings, a stark contrast to his previous experiences with Crash. He understood that synchronization, the connection level with Connect, determined a player's strength in the game. Normal players had around 30% synchronization, but he was close to 90%. He had maintained his top-ranking position for a decade until the major guilds emerged, but now he knew he inhabited a different body. Feeling somewhat unlucky for investing so much time in his previous avatar, he remembered that this was still a closed beta, and at the moment, he was the sole user in this world. Raising his hand, he realized he could still access his inventory even in the closed beta. He decided to scan user information, and the system detected locked user data, quickly updating his profile. Enduring the lingering pain, he discovered his current name was Raul Ashton, the youngest son of the Ashton family, the 5th Count of the Reuben Kingdom. The Ashton County was the first to succumb to Connect's influence. Memories flooded back as he recalled that the Ashton County was a prominent Orthodox family in the Reuben Kingdom. Tragedy had struck when the Count and his eldest son mysteriously perished, while the second son went missing. Chaos ensued as the youngest son inherited the county, culminating in a failed attempt to halt a monster invasion after the barrier of the Forbidden Area had been breached. Realization washed over him as he acknowledged his identity as the youngest son of the Ashton family, Raul Ashton. Gazing at the picturesque city before him, he sensed the impending ruin that would befall it in the next 3 years. Determination surged within him as he entered his room, recognizing that he no longer had Bune or Crash to rely on. It was his last chance. His fist clenched with resolve as he acknowledged the suffering he had endured living as Ban. Missing this opportunity was unthinkable. His gaze fell upon a sword on the table, and he understood that there was only one path to avert disaster. He had to become stronger. He knew that in a month, Ashton Count's traditional coming-of-age ceremony would commence, and if he reached the semifinals, he could enter the Kingdom Academy to bolster his strength and safeguard his life. However, his body suddenly gave way, and he collapsed onto the floor. Confusion clouded his thoughts. Why did he feel so exhausted after just a few swings? Glancing at his status, he realized he was only at level 5, 2 levels behind the maid. He knew he had to begin rigorous training immediately for the upcoming tournament. When the day of the tournament arrived, he marveled at the multitude of participants. A sense of duty weighed upon him as he scanned the competition, fully aware that he would have to face them in battle. Memories of his coach's words resurfaced, reminding him that it had only been 10 minutes, yet he felt utterly drained. He attributed it to the intense pain he endured during the grueling qualifiers. With the system in mind, he recalled being at level 13 during his last check, and his stamina was primed. He had a solid plan for the matches, filling him with confidence about reaching the semifinals. Suddenly, an attack from behind caught him off guard, but he swiftly evaded, causing the assault to strike the ground. He turned to find a fist behind him, and the attacker apologized, claiming it was an accident. The man referred to him as a precious noble and questioned his purpose in the tournament. Recalling the man's name as Dian, Raul realized that Dian had bullied him during swordsmanship training in the past. The family motto held that they trained like it was a real battle, treating everyone as equals on the training ground and absolving anyone of responsibility for training injuries. Dian was nothing more than a bully who preyed on the weaker trainees. Dian suggested that Raul withdraw while he still could, warning that this time it wouldn't be just one bone broken but every single one in Rawl's body. He mockingly instructed his cousins to let Rawl pass, anticipating Rawl's inevitable defeat. With a heart full of determination, Rawl vowed to crush Dian in the finals. Meanwhile, in Ashton's castle, the butler held a report for the man. When questioned about any useful individuals in the tournament, the butler was about to reply when the man's surprise was palpable. He inquired about Rawl's whereabouts, and the butler reported that Rawl had returned to his room after completing his meal. Count Melvin Ashton, Rawl's father, expressed his satisfaction with Rawl's progress. He had never forced Rawl to learn swordsmanship because Rawl was weaker than his brothers. Melvin had patiently waited for Rawl to stand up for himself. Rawl's perseverance had exceeded all expectations. Melvin resolved to visit Rawl after the finals. The day of the finals finally arrived, charged with anticipation and uncertainty. The audience, growing impatient, urged them to wrap up the match, calling for an end to the spectacle. The man facing Rawl cursed under his breath, baffled by why his opponent, seemingly weak, remained standing. Rawl, panting from exhaustion, faced a relentless onslaught of attacks. Despite his weariness, he managed to parry each strike, avoiding getting hit. The man's frustration mounted as none of his strikes found their mark. In a fit of rage, he launched a ferocious attack, shouting at Rawl to go down. Rawl, quick on his feet, slid backward to create some space between them, leaving onlookers and the audience in stunned disbelief. From the crowd, someone acknowledged that Rawl had endured the man's relentless attacks multiple times, questioning how much more he could withstand. Another voice chimed in, praising Rawl's resilience and offering support, further infuriating the man. The man swung his sword with fury, calling Rawl a rat and taunting him about running away. Rawl, undaunted, parried the man's strikes, and the crowd roared with anticipation. The man swung again, but Rawl deftly blocked his attack. With a teasing remark, Rawl taunted that he couldn't hear the man very well. Block after block, Rawl held his own, maintaining a solid defense. The man's frustration grew, and he continued to hurl insults at Rawl, questioning his honor as a member of a Count's family. Rawl, unyielding, continued to parry the man's attacks, then slid back once more, preparing for the next move. Spectators called out to the man, urging him to finish the match as they had bets riding on him. The man, known as Edmund, grew more serious, unleashing his power and forming a mana sword. He warned Rawl that he was about to end it, leaving the audience gasping in shock at the sight of the powerful mana sword. They cautioned Rawl to dodge, as a hit would mean certain defeat. Edmund swung his water-powered skill at Rawl, instructing him to meet his end. To his astonishment, Rawl stood firm, refusing to dodge the attack. Edmund, perplexed, launched another attack, causing a deafening explosion that reverberated through the arena. As the smoke slowly cleared, the referee intervened, standing in the center and declaring the match over. Rawl emerged as the winner, prompting cheers from half the audience, while the other half couldn't believe their eyes. Edmund tossed his sword aside and approached Rawl, expressing disbelief and questioning how Rawl could be the victor. He was about to explain that if the match hadn't been stopped, he would have won, but the referee cut him off, labeling him as foolish and pointing out that if the match had continued, Edmund would be dead by now. Realizing that Rawl had not been standing still but had been aiming for his neck, fear gripped Edmund, and he collapsed to the ground. Rawl approached him, mentioning that they needed to have a discussion about his disrespect toward the county after the tournament. Later, when he arrived back at their castle, Anna respectfully advised him to rest well. As soon as the door shut behind him, he couldn't contain his excitement, shouting in jubilation. He had actually won. With a smile, he opened his status and the system displayed an update. The level of Ashton's swordsmanship mastery had increased to beginner level 9. Proudly, he realized that his plan had worked, capitalizing on the game's feature that granted more experience points and mastery when battling stronger opponents. He understood that facing a more formidable adversary for a longer duration yielded greater experience points. With a clenched fist, he acknowledged the success of his strategy, thanks to his game mode, which offered an experience multiplier by removing the revive option, known as hardcore mode, with high risk and high return. He examined his status, realizing that he had previously complained, but he was now a formidable level 19. In hardcore mode, with classes in sword and psychokinetic, Rawl examined his attributes. His strength stood at 22, agility at 25, stamina at 19, intelligence at 15, willpower at 34, mana at 29, spiritual power at 35, and senses at 30. His unique traits included Psychokinetic Meister S+, Royal Lineage, and other yet undiscovered traits. Realizing that he wouldn't have been able to level up as much in a month if he had been in normal mode, he focused on the 5 unique traits. He anticipated that the rest of his traits would unlock as he continued leveling up. With the upcoming tournament in mind, he decided to test these traits during his matches. As the tournament days arrived, Raul emerged victorious in every match, with fair and clean victories. The audience couldn't fathom how the youngest son of Ashton had reached the grand finale. Speculations ran wild, with some suspecting luck or trickery. Unbeknownst to them, the early stage Connect civilians remained unaware of the player's powers. Back in their castle, Raul contemplated keeping his psychokinetic ability a secret until the right moment to reveal it to the players. He believed he could conceal it with his acting skills. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Ivan introduced himself and expressed concern for Raul's well-being, inquiring about any injuries. Raul reassured Ivan that he was perfectly fine, mentioning the presence of a priest and healer on standby. Ivan placed a hand on his shoulder, advising Raul not to let his guard down, reminding him that some wounds couldn't be healed. Raul acknowledged Ivan's genuine concern, but admitted that he wasn't accustomed to such feelings in his past life. Ivan then handed him a document, confirming that he had fulfilled his request. As Ivan was about to mention Diane, Raul interrupted, telling him not to worry, as he was confident in his victory. Ivan respectfully bowed and left the room. Raul couldn't help but notice that Ivan's demeanor resembled Melvin's when he was younger. He knew that the final opponent would be Diane, a formidable adversary who had brutally wounded his previous opponents. Raul examined the document, recognizing its value in Ashton County's betting system, which supported tournament participants. Placing the document on the table, he believed that it was enough to secure his place in the family. All that remained was to defeat Diane. The host's voice echoed, announcing the commencement of the final match. Raul faced Diane as half the audience cheered him on, urging him to win with his skills. Diane, on the other hand, called Raul a weakling and questioned how he had made it that far, vowing to make Raul regret coming up there. Diane further taunted Raul, promising that with people cheering, Raul would soon discover his worthlessness. He painted a gruesome picture of Raul crawling with his limbs cut off. Raul responded with a yawn, asking Diane if he was done. Clenching his fist in anger, Raul unleashed a powerful violet aura, overwhelming the audience with its mana. The spectators believed Raul to be no match for Diane, who appeared unimpressed. Raul analyzed Diane's stats, noting his level 42, with the class of Expert Knight, a sword user affiliated with Ashton County. Diane held the title of Ashton County Star and was considered a sword genius. Diane's stats included a potential talent grade of B, with strength at 52, agility at 41, stamina at 43, intelligence at 18, willpower at 14, mana at 32, and senses at 21. Raul speculated that Diane's potential talent was only a B, and while Diane appeared impressive, he believed it was Diane's limit. The host announced the start of the match, with Diane angrily threatening to kill Raul and branding him a coward. Ignoring the threats, Raul leaped toward Diane, swiftly positioning himself above him. Diane's attack took Raul by surprise, and he swiftly swung his sword down in retaliation. Their blades clashed, each striving not to be the first to yield. Raul forcefully pushed down his sword, causing Diane to slide back, trying to evade the blow. Angrily, Diane accused Raul of showing off, but Raul remained silent, contemplating that Diane's flexibility was below his expectations. They continued their exchange, blocking and attacking each other relentlessly. Raul noticed that Diane's strength was indeed formidable. Diane swung his sword angrily, prompting Raul to dodge skillfully. Diane questioned why Raul hadn't struck him, but Raul replied by blocking Diane's sword. He realized he could see Diane's sword clearly. Seizing an opportunity, Raul used his feet to trip Diane, sending him tumbling face first to the ground. In that moment, Raul pondered that a sword skill without practical experience was akin to a generic nobleman's sword. He couldn't help but recall how Raul had been bullied by Diane. Diane, infuriated by the trip, released his powerful aura once more, vowing to kill Raul. Unfazed, Raul calmly sidestepped Diane's attack and tripped him again, all the while noting Diane's apparent anger issues. Diane rolled on the ground, while Raul calmly remarked on Diane's behavior, suggesting he look at himself and feel ashamed of his affiliation with Ashton County. Once more, Diane charged at Raul in a fit of rage, but Raul merely punched him in the face, causing Diane to slowly fall and collapse on the ground.